All right, so if we're not using a model, there's another strategy that we can use to find common denominators when adding fractions. And with this first one, 1/2 plus 3/8, you can look to see if maybe you only have to change one of the fractions. And so in this case, I know 1/2, that one's an easy one to change to whatever denominator we have. So I know that 4 is half of 8. So 4/8 would be the same thing as 1/2. And, to show that those are equivalent, if I multiply 2 times 4, I get 8, and then 1 times 2, or 1 times 4 gives me 4. I always multiply the numerator and denominator by the same number to keep it equivalent. And then, so here, since 8 is our common denominator, I now have a common denominator, so I can add 4 plus 3, which gives me 7/8. Now, on this next one, we're going to look at another strategy that we can use, and that's finding the least common denominator. And the way that we do that is we find the multiples of our denominator. So I'm going to list out the multiples of 8. So if I'm counting by 8s, I have 8, then I have 16, then 24. And I'm going to go ahead and stop right there because I'm going to see if I can find a multiple with 12 on that list. So I'm going to start with 12, and then I have 24, 36. So I don't have to keep going. I've found a common multiple of 24. Now, if we were to do this one with the pictures, we would have to have a lot of small boxes to divide these up. So using the multiples is going to make it easier. Because if we did use the boxes, I would end up with 96 little squares to have to work with. So that tells us that there are more than one common denominator that we can use. But if we use the least common denominator, it's going to make it easier for us to work with. So I'm going to have 24 for my denominators. So the way that I get my numerators, I know I have to keep everything equivalent. So whatever I multiply 12 by to get 24, I have to multiply the 3 by that same number. So 12 times 2 gives me 24, so I have to multiply 3 times 2 to get my numerator. And then here, 8 times 3 is 24, so I have to multiply 2 times 3 to keep everything equivalent. So that ends up being, so let me go back and check. So 12 times 2 gave me 24, 3 times 2 gives me 6. And then I end up with 2 times 3 is 6, and then 8 times 3 is 24. So these actually were already equivalent fractions. And, we could have found that out by simplifying. But we'll go ahead and finish this out. So now we've got common denominators, so we can add. That gives me 12 24ths. So remember, when simplifying, if you're taking a multiple choice test, this may not be the answer. So you will have to simplify. So what we're going to look for is the greatest common factor between 12 and 24 to divide by. And some of you may recognize this, immediately as, 12 being half of 24. But if you don't, we could then look at another strategy and say that they're both even, so we could divide by 2. But if we want to, make the process, so we don't have to keep dividing by 2 because we're going to keep getting even numbers, we can look for their greatest common factor. So I know with 12, my factors are 12 times 1, 2 times 6, and then 3 times 4. So my factors of 24 are 24 times 1, and then 12 times 2. So I see right away that 12 is going to be my greatest common factor. So if I divide both of these by 12, I do end up with a half. And I could divide them by any of their common factors. But to get it in simplest form, I do need to divide by the greatest common factor, or you can just keep dividing until you get it to where there's not any common factors other than 1 in itself. So 1 and 2, they don't have any common factors other than 1. All right, so I'm going to give you some problems like this to practice on your form.